So this weekend, Devin Haney takes on Brian Norman, and I believe Devin Haney is going to win this fight. Um, I've been thinking it's a tough one to call, definitely, but I'm going with Devin Haney to win. I think he beats Brian Norman, and I think his experience at the higher level is gonna be a big factor and is gonna show. I think that is a big reason why I am going with Devin Haney to win this fight against Brian Norman. Look, Brian Norman, world level guy, proven it, but he's a world champion, but he's beaten B level world champions. That's the reality here. He's not beaten elite world champions to get where he is. Look, 147 is a very weak division right now. It's very weak. Devin Haney and Brian Norman are the stars in the division. Everybody else is so below them, in my opinion. Everyone else in the 147 division is way below these two. Um, let's be completely honest here. I think Devin Haney has fought the best of the best. As much as annoying as he can be and as irritated as people get by him, you've got to say Devin Haney has never ducked anybody, never ducked down for a fight. He always fights the most difficult opponents, no matter what you think of him. Never ducked anyone. And him taking this Brian Norman fight where he is the underdog, actually, it's the first time he's been the underdog, possibly in his career. It's in a very long time anyway. Um, yeah, like you've got to respect the guy. It's a huge fight. Brian Norman's a really quick puncher, and he's a very powerful puncher. It's a very dangerous fight for Devin Haney. And coming off that Jose Ramirez fight, people are going to be saying, "Oh, he's got no chance. He's got no chance." But I think a big thing is as well, and we see it all the time when you're up against somebody who is dangerous, they will bring out your A game. And I feel like Devin Haney is going to perform to Brian Norman's level. And when Brian Norman puts it on him and makes it a fight, that is when Devin Haney will perform and box his best and use his IQ properly this time round. Um, so I think Devin Haney will win. I think Brian Norman's going to bring out the best Devin Haney here. And an interesting one because I feel that I get the impression Devin Haney might plant his feet a bit more in this fight. I see this fight being very similar to Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda. Haney performing similar, but I think Brian Norman's going to be much more competitive against Haney than what Zepeda was against Shakur. But I think Devin Haney's going to be able to do enough to win. And I think his output's going to be much better. It's going to be much more in this fight. And Brian Norman's going to bring that out of Devin Haney this time round. Devin Haney's going to perform to the level and above that Brian Norman is going to bring. That is honestly what I think. And we've seen great performances from Devin Haney in his career. Look, many people think he lost to Lomachenko. It was a very competitive fight, in my opinion. Loma probably did edge it, but either way, I thought it was Devin Haney performed to a very high level. Like, you've got to say that when you're performing in competitive fights with Lomachenko, you're performing to the highest level in world boxing. No matter if you think he won or lost, it was competitive. Devin Haney fought at the highest level possible. You can't, love him or hate him. You can't deny it. That is the truth. I thought Devin Haney was fantastic when he fought Regis Prograis. That was a fantastic performance from him. We've seen many great performances in Haney's career. I thought the two George Kambosos performances were very good, very strong again, boxed very well in both. You know, these are the recent ones where, he's been at the highest level of his career, being a world champion. But then we go to that Ryan Garcia fight, and I do get why loads of people think that Devin Haney had a stuff take him out of him there. People saying, "Oh, it took his soul." Reality is, Ryan Garcia cheated in that fight. He did. Haney hasn't dealt with it well at all, though. Yeah, he didn't deal with it well at all. But Garcia cheated in the fight. Drug cheat, PED cheat. You know, gave Ryan Garcia much more confidence in there, and yeah, whether you're annoyed at the fact Garcia cheated or not, he cheated. So I do feel for Haney that he got cheated, but the way he's dealt with it, hasn't been great at all. The way him and Bill Haney have dealt with it has been shocking. But look, we talk about this. We talk about Brian Norman now, and it's like he's beaten B-level champions. Obviously, we've seen some class knockouts from him in his career for his speed and his power. We've seen many great moments from Brian Norman in his career. He's very dangerous at mid-range. He's good at fighting on the ropes. He's good at fighting off on the front foot. He can fight on the back foot and is very explosive, but I don't think Devin Haney's going to play into Brian Norman's game here. Brian Norman's going to want it up close. He's going to want to make it a fight because as good of a boxer Brian Norman can be, very good counter puncher. He's not going to be able to outsmart someone like Devin Haney. That's the thing. So he's going to have to take the fight to him and want to make it at mid range. But I think what Devin Haney is going to doing though is, people saying he just runs around against Jose Ramirez. He's kind of running on the back foot. Yeah. Other than that though, we look at the Regis Pro grade performance, which I thought was very good. I thought Haney held his feet well when he threw his shots, then moved off well, created angles, and I think that's going to work here well. I think he's going to plant his feet quite a bit here. Not necessarily getting to trades with Brian Norman because that puts Haney at a big advantage, and Haney's smart enough to know not to stand in trades with Brian Norman. But I see Devin Haney planting his feet, trying to get Brian Norman's respect here. He might not be able to get his full respect with his power, but he's going to be sitting down on his shots and throwing big power shots with that right hand. But I see Devin Haney being able to outwork Brian Norman, and I don't think Brian Norman has seen this level. Devin Haney has fought at a completely different level to what Brian Norman has. Again, Brian Norman, world class fighter, but you know he's not fought the kind of champions that Devin Haney has fought in his career. Never. As good as he is. And this all plays parts in fights. It does. Experience at the top level plays parts in fights. Devin Haney, that Lomachenko fight is one we got to talk about because you just learn different kind of things. You just learn different kinds of things when you're in there with someone like Lomachenko, win or lose. Um, Haney's had that experience. He's had experience with the best guys in the sport, the smartest minds in the sport. Haney is now probably one of the smartest minds in the sport. Brian Norman, again, is up there. He's one of the best boxers in the world right now, in my opinion. Definitely. He's very underrated as well. Doesn't get enough credit. But the reality is that he hasn't seen this level. This is a completely different thing for Brian Norman. Completely different level. A level which he hasn't seen before. He's up against a guy with boxing IQ that he's never seen before. So I just feel like that's going to be one of the biggest effects here. And I think Devin Haney is going to be able to control this fight as we go. That is what I think will happen. Brian Norman will be competitive, but Devin Haney's going to outsmart him. Haney will be able to outwork him. Haney's going to be smarter. Haney's very good at ending combinations well. Very good at, I think, he's good at ending exchanges well. He's not going to hang around much in exchanges because Norman's got ridiculously quick hands. But I'd say Norman probably has quicker hands and power over Devin Haney. But Haney's got the IQ. Haney's got way better footwork than Brian Norman. They're both attribute wise, they've both got things over each other, but you can't really beat experience. That's a big difficult thing to beat. And I think that's something that Haney's gonna expose in this fight. That is experience at the top level. That's what wins Devin Haney the fight.